When I was 19, I had a mind-blowing experience that I was totally one with the whole universe. I wasn't just an element in the universe. I was actually not me the way I thought I was me, but somehow the whole universe. Almost like my normal sense of me had just been an imaginary kind of made up thing, and it vanished, and my consciousness was one with this universal consciousness or something like that. Hey, hello everybody. I'm Henry Shukman on Your Superior Self.
Perfection, Henry, my man. Thank you so much for taking the time. It seems like the stars have aligned for us to have this conversation right now. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's really
Yeah,
fun and exciting.
absolutely. I read your book, Original Love. I have your app and I use it. It's very unique because it's like it's not giving you a plethora of options. Basically it's like one way, and it's like you're gonna just try this out and see how it fits. And I really resonate with that. So thank you for writing the book and then also creating the app for others like myself to have that experience.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored that you've dived into both of them. And the thinking with the app is basically it's kind of like Duolingo for meditation. It's like, because actually meditation can be, it can be taught, it can be guided. And why wouldn't we approach it that way? And if I'm a beginner or even a novice, and there's 300 courses on a meditation app, how am I supposed to know which one I should do?
Sure.
So we said, let's just do something the opposite way. We're going to hold your hand and lead you and go to the deep stuff that meditation offers as well.
I love that, diving into the deep end, right? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
studies out there. Like I was learning in psychology, like a lot of people don't really know how to meditate, or you know what I mean? Like they can't just really
Yeah.
sit still and allow. And just reading your book, I mean, the four ends of the path of awakening, I thought was fascinating because you talk about your personal experiences, but then also you talk about the tradition and culture that you come from meditation practices. And so I'm like really curious, man. Like what exactly is your background in meditation? So give the listeners some context to like your life path and your journey and what you've walked through to get to where you're at, and then just kind of like explain exactly what meditation does to our consciousness.
Okay. That's
Easy
yeah.
question.
That's yeah, easy. Okay, I'll try to be really brief. I mean, I grew up really rationalist, empiricist, logical in Oxford University, where my parents were professors, and I totally imbibed that worldview. There was no mystery that science wouldn't eventually solve, and the idea of God was just old-fashioned. And when I was Trey, are you still there?
I'm right here. I'm just editing
Yeah.
while
Okay.
you do it, but
Okay. And so, when I was 19, I had a mind-blowing experience that I was totally one with the whole universe. I was like, I wasn't just an element in the universe. I was actually somehow what I really was deep down was not me the way I thought I was me, but somehow the whole universe. And it was almost like my normal sense of me had just been an imaginary kind of made up thing, and it vanished, and my consciousness was one with this universal consciousness or something like that. So I had no idea what had just happened to me. I had no framework for understanding an experience like that. I knew nothing about what we might call spirituality. I wasn't interested in it, actually. But this thing happened, and I was stone cold sober. It wasn't like I'd been taking psychedelic drugs or something. It just happened out of the blue. And the thing about it was that I knew in some way it was true. I felt in my bones it was real, that I'd just seen a deeper level of reality. And it was totally life changing. I felt like it's unbelievable. There's this vast cosmic love and consciousness that's making everything, that everything is composed of, and I just fallen into it, without any kind of curiosity about that either. It just happened out of nowhere. So then, a few weeks later, I went home. I'd been away at the time on a gap year, far from home, working abroad. And then this thing happened. I go home, back to Oxford, and within half an hour, I have something like a breakdown, a really difficult kind of breakdown. And it was, I continued to function. I went to college and I managed to sort of keep going, but I was miserable. And sort of, like I said, I sort of semi-functional, and I was, probably on the outside it wasn't so obvious how stricken I was within. But then when I was in my mid-20s, I started meditating. And that gave me a way of recognizing, number one, how unhappy I was, and number two, a path of starting to heal, and then number three, a path of starting to understand and kind of revisit what on earth had happened to me in that amazing moment when I was 19. And I began to understand it wasn't just some weird, random, psychic fluke. It was something, real, just like I felt, and that there are paths in this world that can help you discover that side of things and help you learn to live with some more consistent degree of connection, because it's real, it's true. There is a level of our experience where we're one with everything, and so I was so excited to realize other people know about this, and it's not just a random thing that no humans are interested in. There's people interested in this, and so I've been a writer and a poet and a meditator for many years, and I've done different kinds of meditation, and I think it's sweet. There are different kinds, and they offer different things, and not all meditation paths are quite the same, actually, in what they're intending to help us with. I'd say they all can help with suffering, and they can help to different degrees with the project of awakening to our unity with the whole cosmos. They're not all as interested in that,
Sure.
actually. And so I found Zen. That was a really good one for the big picture stuff, the whole cosmos. And then I did also quite a lot of mindfulness, which is more about healing the troubled self and the nervous system. And I did some transcendental meditation. I started with that, actually, which was marvelous. And I've done some deep Theravada practice, also amazing. So I've sampled, but I've also been very committed for a period of time to Zen. I had some beautiful teachers who really took me through a transformative journey in Zen. So I think I would say, based on my own experience, anybody who's curious about meditation and the deeper possibilities it can unlock, is it may be good for, to have a chunk of time when you're really deep in one path, letting it take you through something quite transformative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also cool to sample.
Sure. It's like you're taking this integrative approach to different modalities or different techniques, traditions, which I love. Zen for me has been super confusing. Like the koans and just the idea, like I've listened to some of the, I read some of the books about Zen, and it seems like it's like very confusing for me, which I think is the point, to like really stop the analytical mind and just kind of like, get out of your mind. The Gospel of Thomas, I'm reading that book, and it reminds me of a lot of Zen, because it seems like there are koans in the teaching, or in the work of Jesus, or the original text or teachings of Jesus or Yeshua. So it's interesting to me how like Zen has these like confusing teachings to get you out of your mind and into that space of like no thought, of just like awareness almost.
Yeah, that's Shall I just say a
Yeah,
word
go
on
ahead,
that?
man.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think
Yeah,
it's absolutely right. I think, I would say basically the koan style of Zen, which is not the only style of Zen, but
sure.
that is really coming from that vast cosmic oneness that it knows we are made of. And it's trying to, the koans are these weird little phrases. What is the sound of one hand, or what's your original face from before even your parents were born, let alone you. And so they're trying to, what they're doing is they're trying to circumvent or kind of sidestep, get around our ordinary way of constructing the world, where I'm in here in this body or in this skull and everything else is outside of me. They're trying to break down, or kind of, maybe breakdown's not the right word. They're trying to open us up to a totally different way of experiencing this very moment, where we're not so separate. And those weird phrases are, actually most of them, this is what we're talking about with koans, these strange little phrases. Make Mount Fuji, take 3 steps. That's another one. There's lots of them actually, but what they're trying to do is get us to drop our ordinary way of perceiving and experiencing, and like suddenly have a glimpse, like, whoa, there's a whole other thing going on here, and so, yeah, and the continual chatter in the mind, the running ticker tape of commentary in the mind, it does reinforce the way we normally see things. So if you can interrupt that,
Sure.
there's a gap, there's a space,
I love that. So in that process, just through your experience, I mean, you can't really standardize the awakening process, but like, what is meditation's relationship to the awakening process? Like, does it expand the aperture of our consciousness to where we start experiencing a more awakened state of being? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you're right on. That's actually right on.
Well, what
could
what
say
does it mean
so.
to be what does it mean to be awakened, right? Like, to just the awareness of what you are without the persona, or the, like, to your point of that experience when you were younger at 19, like where you felt the vastness of the cosmos and being united with that. Is that being awakened?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well. I feel that there are different dimensions of what awakening means. But fundamentally, it's about not being so beguiled and taken in by our ordinary sense of separateness. So, as a separate self, I'm constantly under siege. I'm living in a world that I got to try to wrest, get from it what I really need and want, and I've got to try to keep off everything I don't want. And I'm in competition with other people and with other creatures who want to eat me, and I want to eat them, and the whole thing is like a battleground. But actually, if that self is just gone, or if it just kind of evaporates, if we realize that it's only a collection of thoughts, it's nothing but thoughts, if we really realize that it's nothing but thoughts, then we can suddenly be freed from it. And when we're freed from it, even just for a little moment, we discover that this very moment right now is a really different thing from what our separate sense of self had made it seem like it was. And suddenly we're just part of a beautiful flux and flow of things arising, and it's not like we can't function. We can, but we just don't, we're not carrying around this tight sense of me in the middle. And sometimes it might show up as mind-blowing unity with the cosmos. Sometimes it's a mind-blowing emptiness. Everything's kind of just a hallucination or an appearance, and we see through it, and there's just boundless empty, and it's so beautiful. And sometimes it's just kind of normal. It's just peacefully having a cup of tea, having a chat. I mean, they say that you're really awakened when, and this is a bit like a koan actually, so it may not help, but it's a bit confusing, but they say you're really awakened when there's no longer a difference between being awakened and not being awakened. You're free to the whole business. But, okay, maybe that's another level of
But it makes sense
complexity.
though, because you're just aware the entire time. You know what I mean? Like you're just aware of the experience. So like even if you are awakened or if you're not awakened, like if you can just step back into that awareness of things happening around you, like the objective observer almost. Like that
Yes,
would be to
yes.
me. That's what that means.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I find that fascinating because like when we get tied into the persona, that's where suffering comes from, right? Like so
exactly.
what is the root cause of suffering? I guess what has been the root cause for your suffering in life?
Yeah, I'd say when I boil it down, it's often like it's some mixture of resisting and kind of grasping. Either I'm trying to get things and cling on to them, hold them, or I'm trying to resist them.
Hmm.
And the sort of solution to both is basically allowing. And you
So
used that word
surrendering, just
earlier. So
allowing,
yes,
like,
yeah, it's like, hey, I don't know how things are supposed to go. And like something really difficult happens in a life, and I've had difficult things happen, and we all have, and if we haven't yet, we will. And the thing is, I don't know how things are supposed to go. And like something really difficult happens in a life, and I've had difficult things happen, and we all have, and if we haven't yet, we will. And the thing is, if I resist and say this shouldn't be happening, I can't let this happen, but I'm actually powerless to stop it. As we are with things, with some big major challenges in life, what happens if I somehow let go of my resisting? And what happens is man, I get more humble. I realize, how do I really know what's supposed to happen in a human life? Things that are outside my comprehension are happening, and outside my scope of control. And to surrender to that is sort of humbling, but it's actually healing as well, because we can find that our heart, actually, our heart can break, and it's not a bad thing. I actually kind of believe that heartbreak is a path of growth. My heart breaks, and then my heart's more open,
hmm.
and then I can be wholehearted. So, whereas I spent a lot of my early life trying to be closed, because I was afraid of the world. And I mean, like after that experience, that when I was 19 and I came home, and I suddenly I was so open, I couldn't really handle I came back to what had been a really unhappy childhood home, and I was so open that now I had no defenses against some of the unhappiness of my childhood. It was kind of overwhelming. But actually, on reflection, if I'd been able to be open and had some support and stuff in that, it would have been really healing. Instead, I resisted and closed up, and I got to fight this and, keep being who I want to be, kind of thing, and in the end, it was kind of not the right path.
Hmm. Is there a not the right path though? I feel like all paths are just getting us to where we need to be, or what helps us become what we need to become. It's like the many paths up the mountain kind of metaphor. because I'm the same way, right? Like I look back at my childhood and my path, and like there are definitely things that make me cringe. To like, I was definitely a different person then than I am today. But then again, I wouldn't be who I am today without that path. So I had to have those sufferings. I had to have those experiences. Just to appreciate the growth. The birth of this newer consciousness, this awakened. Am I awakened? I'm aware of something different in this experience, and to say that I'm enlightened, I don't. Am I an enlightened master? I don't. Who's who am I to define that and what that is? I mean, I am here just experiencing. But to your point about a surrendering and allowing, like, how do you create goals for yourself? If you're surrendering to the moment, like, is there still desires for achievement? I mean, you've written this book, right? So there's obviously an intention there to sell books. But like being a bestseller, is that something that's on that list of goals? Like, how do you surrender to that? Do you just surrender to Mother Divine and say, hey, look, I'm putting this out there. This is my intentions to help humanity become a little bit more aware. Whatever happens, happens. Like, how do you proceed through life with that mentality?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I mean, that's a navigation that I'm in, is exactly that. But I will say that I feel what I want is really different if I'm living in my awakened heart than what I want if I'm a contracted self. If I'm contracted, then I'm trying to promote myself, I'm trying to protect myself. But if my heart's open, I'm not. I'm just trying to serve. And this book came by itself, really. It's a book that, I mean, it may sound like this is too weird, but I really almost don't feel like it's my book. It just came in a rush in about 12 days, and I covered 4 yellow pads with it, just handwritten, and then it took probably kind of 2 years of rewriting it, and I wrote a whole ton more. And then actually my wife had read the first draft of it and loved it, and then she saw my later draft, which was like 30% longer or 40% longer, and she was like, what have you done to this thing? It was so good. So then there was another few months of stripping it out again, and so there's a lot of work on it. But basically it was like it kind of just, it came almost by itself. And I hope it'll be some help in the world. I really sincerely hope that, and that it'll give some, encouragement and hope to people who need it, and it'll also offer like a path, and it'll bring some clarity to the world of meditation that needs some clarity, because there's a lot of confusion about the different possibilities of meditation. What's awakening? What's mindfulness? What's connectedness? And so I map it out in a way that I don't think there's a book out there right now that maps out the possibilities of meditation quite as clearly as mine does. I think that's
Sure.
true.
No, it is 100%. Like that's some of the questions that I have are regarding those states of being and consciousness, right? Like, what's the difference between awakening and absorption, right? Like,
Right.
and I think that's a great question. Like, so what's the difference?
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, look, okay, so I'd put it like this, like a human condition is sometimes called absorption in meditation. It's also like being in a flow state. When an athlete is in the zone, when a musician or an artist or a writer gets in the groove and somehow it seems effortless, but they're performing at a pretty high level and they feel really, like time stops and they're less self-conscious. That's a flow state. So that happens in meditation, and it's called absorption often in meditation. Sometimes they call it samadhi, and sometimes, actually, yeah, whatever. It's got different names, but it's so what's the difference between that and awakening? So in a flow state, it's a beautiful thing, and whether it's in meditation or whether it's honestly preparing a meal, you might get in a flow state, or mowing the lawn. It can happen for anybody in ordinary activities in the day, and it's beautiful. And even in meetings, sometimes you get in a flow state, and the whole
Depending on the meeting.
What's that?
I said depending on the meeting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
It
Well,
could have been an email, but
right, true, true, very true. But so, but why is that not the same as awakening? In awakening, we really see that we're not the separate self we thought we were. We really see that. In flow states, it's true that separate self is generally kind of quieter, but we haven't actually seen, oh my gosh, that's not the end of who I am. I am both less and more than that. That's the promise of awakening. Whereas
I love that.
yeah. Does that
I
make
love that.
sense? Like you
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
kind of a
Well,
dividing line there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, 100%. Like you hear people talking about, oh, meditation can be you just, washing the dishes and being totally present in the moment. But that is, to me, to your point, the absorption part. So,
Yes.
there's a lot of neuroscience supporting flow states. And Mikai Csikszentmihalyi did a lot of research in flow states. And Stephen
That's
Kotler has written about flow states.
that's
And,
right. I
and
really like Stephen's book actually.
I
Stephen
love
Flow.
Kotler. Kotler
Yeah,
is
yeah,
awesome, man. He's got some
yeah,
really cool books, and
yeah,
he's so super creative in how he writes, and the detail in his books, fascinating.
yeah.
But it's like some type of shutting down of the prefrontal cortex of the self, almost. Right? I'm not a neuroscientist, but
Yes.
like there's something related to that part of being in flow, to where that shuts down the feel of the individual, and now you're starting feeling more of that connectedness. And I think in awakening,
Yes.
you're really um, getting a more sense of the connectedness. But there's a part in there where you're talking about there's a connection with that smaller self, or that part of yourself that you feel is more connected. Is that the higher self that you're interacting with?
I wouldn't see it quite like that. If I was talking about a higher self, it would be the cosmic, self that we all are. And that's and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because so in mindfulness we can connect with a really compassionate, peaceful witness, and that mindful witness is a dimension, I think, of ourself. I think it's part of who we feel ourselves to be. That's a really beautiful thing to connect with and to land in and to be grounded in, because it's compassionate and it's aware, and it can cherish experience and really appreciate experience. And so that's all beautiful. But I don't see that as finding that. I don't know whether that would be called a higher self, I don't know. But it's not quite the same as awakening, that either. That's more the beauty of mindfulness, is finding that capacity for being aware in a caring kind of way. And so that's a huge thing. I mean, in my own life, it was to start to contact that, on a slightly more regular basis. And
Mm.
so that's a huge thing. I mean, in my own life, it was to start to contact that, on a slightly more regular basis, was really life-changing.
Sure.
Because I was so fried for early part of my adulthood, constantly like stressed and worried and anxious and depressed and striving to, get somewhere, and worrying about this and worrying about that. And then suddenly there was this intervention where you're just going to be quiet and still for 20 minutes twice a day. And it was amazing how it changed the way my nervous system was operating, and brought peace as another element in my life. It's not like I was only peaceful thereafter, of course not, but to have peace in the mix as sometimes happening, it was really really transformative.
Mm.
And so I regard that as fruit of mindfulness.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a question I wanted to ask you, and then I got absorbed into this conversation. Deep flow state there, but you know,
That's all.
well,
Maybe it'll
that's
come
what
back.
now I'm remembering it now. It is when you have these moments of awareness, like, and we get, the A type personality, like who I am, wants to have control over all the variables and like, be the creator of this timeline, to be the creator and manifest the wants or desires and the goals and the dreams and everything. But as you awaken, like, are you finding it more so that this place is more set up of a, like, I guess my question is like, how much control or how much effect do you have in your reality, as opposed to, like, was it already like set up? You know what I mean? Like, are you just kind of under, like the Matrix, where you're understanding why you made those choices previously? You know what I mean? Before coming into this incarnation, or is it like, are you here? You're planted in into this reality, and you become aware that you are the creator, and now it's time to turn up the volume on that creation, that creating. So I don't know if that makes sense. Like, is it the awareness expansion, like, does it give you more insight onto whether this is already pre-made up, or like, I am the creator, I'm going to create, if that makes sense?
That's a beautiful. I'm not 100% in there, but I'm loving what you're saying. It's a beautiful way of thinking about things. What I would say, like, here's what I feel is like, gosh, it's so different when you know that this is all a kind of mirage. It's like you've got to take it seriously, you've got to live in it, and you've got to try to help. If it's a dream, you've got to help to make it as happy a dream as it can be. But to have seen that all of this is in a certain way an apparition, it really does make a huge difference. And what I feel is it's like the sense of purpose. I'd love to explore this a bit with you, because I'm not very articulate on it actually, but I feel like previously I would have a simple purpose, like an ambition basically. I want to achieve X, I want to make X happen, and and Y over here and Z over there. I want to make those things happen. And meanwhile, I'm trying to avoid A, B, and C happening, of course, as well. And that would be some sort of, in a way, sort of purpose of my life. But actually, it's now I have much less of a sense of purpose on that level. But I feel like I'm part of a bigger kind of purpose. And this bigger, so I have a sense of purpose, but it's almost like it's not truly only coming from me. It's like I feel thrilled to be part of a kind of evolving purpose, or something like a process of things unfolding. And I know that somehow I've got some part to play in that, but I'm not the sole creator of it,
Hmm.
And I think honestly, I sort of think it is rather like the Matrix in some ways. This life is somewhat like the Matrix, although I totally don't think that when we wake up, we find we're being controlled by giant insects. Not, it's the opposite. We find that we're part of everything, and that there's a weave that unifies everything, and we're part of that. And so that's why my book's called Original Love, because what we wake up into is really, it's a kind of boundless love that has no shape, no form. So, some people would object and say, well, it's not really love. Maybe it's some kind of creative force or something, but love is too human. It's not really that. And I don't really mind. Some might say that I don't really mind, And some say, well, it's not love, it's awareness. It's just awareness. I don't even totally agree with that. I
I
think
love how
it's,
we put labels on things, right? I mean, like the word love, like, has so many different meanings,
yeah, yeah,
like Plato was like, in one of his writings, arguing the definition of virtue. Like, how do you even put like a standardized definition to virtue? Like, every man experiences virtue differently. So love could be experienced
yes,
differently. Some people don't experience love,
yes,
or they
yes,
experience a traumatic love, and so they tag that to love, the definition, and it's like it's distorted. So when we say it's love,
yes,
it's like the only thing that we can anchor ourselves to in that experience to say it's like this. But again, that experience of love is different for everyone. So I hear you, man. It's like it's
Yeah.
semantics.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly, exactly. Because we're talking about levels of human experience that don't fit language. Actually,
Sure.
that's a tricky thing. We can do our best to try to suggest it with language, and that's what I've done throughout this book, Original Love. But man, it doesn't actually. It's like you're trying to. It's like you're trying to do cookie cutter with a cloud. It doesn't fit.
Absolutely, 100%. And so, like, the awakening process or the awakening states are, I think, in your book. I think I'm paraphrasing here, a doorway to levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so, what are the levels of consciousness that awakening allows us to walk through?
Yeah. Okay. So broadly, there's that mindful witness, the loving, peaceful, cherishing, kind, caring consciousness that is, we're all pre-equipped with, but we can get rusty in knowing how to access it. So that's one. Then there's finding, dropping into this level of sort of a deeper life where we feel like we're tapping into the soul, where my soul, it longs to be in the hills, or it longs to walk in the forest, it longs to fall in love. This kind of deeper yearnings that we have in life, that's beautiful, and that's kind of this level of soul. And then there's flow states and all that happens in them. And I write about Csikszentmihalyi and his fantastic research, by the way, in the book as well. And then there's awakening to the non-dual, to the dropping away of self and other, and finding that somehow I am not just connected, I'm intimate with the Himalaya, with the Rockies, with the Hudson Bay, with the New York City, I'm part of all of it, the Pacific Ocean, and so that all these things in Mars, Jupiter and whatever, Andromeda, things that would seem to be far away, there's some level that we humans can drop into where they're just not far away. It's like a spaceless or sizeless dimension where everything is present.
Hmm.
And it's
I was getting ready to say something very, very curious in my mind. So when you have that connection, that sense of oneness, is it like you're conscious that the mountains are conscious and aware of you, that the ocean is conscious and aware of you, that the planets, the universe is conscious and aware of you, like you are them? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I actually have found that in some of the deeper moments of awakening, because I don't live there all the time. Like right now, I'm aware of a great vastness all around that's enclosing you and me as we have this conversation, but I'm not like, that would be a very awakened level where you recognize that the tree and the mountain and Mars, they're all awake, they're all aware, and in a way, when you wake up, you join them. It's like, I sometimes think that one way to understand this is like, everything's awake except for me.
Well, that's the thing, right? I heard someone speaking the other day, and I can't remember his name. He was talking about how, like, meditation being brought to the West and being taught to the West is like surfing. Like, they have taught us how to stand up on the board, right, and surf. But Eastern traditions are the guys that can get up on the surfboard and do a bunch of tricks, regarding consciousness and meditation. So I'm just curious, like, when, and using that metaphor, like when we can learn to stand up on that board and not fall off and actually ride a wave and start getting better and trying different techniques, like what are some of the techniques and tricks that we can do in meditation in our consciousness that would some of the masters can do?
Yeah, well, I mean, there would be things like, how to bring on very strong, loving feelings, pro-social feelings, how to go into, there's a whole set of absorption states that are known as jhana states. They're really incredible states of mind that you can get into in meditation. And there's 8 of them, and there's methods for switching on, going into each of them. And you can, once you've got a fairly ripe, mature practice, it's fairly easy to do that, and you could go there. You could actually go there quite quickly to one of the jhana states, one of the absorption states. You could also, there are some meditations, like we were talking about koans earlier. Well, so if you're experienced, you can sit with a koan, and you can kind of bring on, the koan can help to bring on a sense of boundlessness, of intimacy with everything in a meditation, fairly sort of reliably when you get to a certain level of practice. But when you ask that question, and I think of all the Zen masters of old, what did they do as adepts? Their answer would be, and this for real has been what some of them did answer, is I wash the rice in a bowl, I get clean water, I fetch firewood, I light the wood, I put the pot of rice with its water on the stove, I wait, I listen to the birds, I sweep the yard. When the rice is ready, I eat it. And that would be their acrobatics on the surfboard. To live ordinary life in full awareness, you can't beat it. You can't beat it.
Yeah, and then they'll, then they're, I don't know if they would ever tell you, I've been to different dimensions, right? Like I've been to different realities, like, you know what I mean? Like I just don't feel like, because then that creates a target or a goal for us. Like so many different teachers have spoken to, like I've had many conversations with who I think are advanced spiritual teachers that very rarely speak about their experiences in different realities. But then there's also been many that have said, yeah, like I've been able to go to different dimensions and have different experiences in different realities, different timelines, different universes. And it's like what? But then that just creates a goal. You know what I mean? That just creates a goal for me to like go in my meditation and have those experiences when I just don't, I don't know. Do you think there's like a governor almost like to our consciousness to where like, they're like, all right, wait, let's set the timer on this kid, let him get to this a certain temperature, and then we can allow him to have these different experiences. Because I feel like the more immature consciousness that I am, like I could probably screw some things up if they fully release me out into the universe and start screwing up different timelines. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've heard. I mean, I'll tell you what. A couple of points I want to bring up relative to this. The first, actually, is that in Zen, they think the real heart of the matter is not many dimensions; it's no dimensions. It's getting to the true source of all, which is zero. All gone. No dimensions. And that is what is busy being you and me and this whole world. It's actually the total absence that is absence of anything. It's like pre-Big Bang, And that is what is actually being all of this. And to discover that, to fall into it, collapse into it just for an instant, where everything's gone, and then comes back. Thereafter, you know that every moment is being created and is a gift of infinite richness.
Sure,
And
because there
generosity.
is not, it comes from nothing, right? But isn't it like kind of depressing,
Exactly.
right? Almost, because it's like, you know what that reminds me of? The movie The Never Ending Story, right? When the nothing comes and just takes everything out, right? And so they're all running from this black void of nothingness, and the wolf and everything. Like, I love that movie as a kid. But like the nothingness. So like, is that like the divine feminine, where everything is just kind of like just there and nothingness, and there, but there's full potential for something, and then the divine masculine is the materialization into something. Does that make sense?
It does, but I would see it slightly differently. I think it's the divine womb.
Mm.
That nothingness is the womb of everything. There's a there's a there's a Buddhist text from the first century CE that says it's called Mother of all Buddhas, um, Great Wisdom, or the Great Wisdom Virtue, or something. It's a slightly complex title, but it means that the ultimate reality is exactly this moment, just like it is, which is also absolutely empty. But that emptiness is creating this, and it's pouring out of nothing. And so the emptiness, the nothingness, is infinitely creative, infinitely fertile. So the idea that it's like a fearful void and nothingness is totally wrong. It's actually the opposite. It's the ultimate good, because it's giving everything. And I
Mm.
feel we can experience this. I think we humans can actually directly get a glimpse of this zero that is giving everything. And I think it's the absolute total cure for nihilism.
Really?
The
Because like I
absolute,
feel I could hear them now just saying, "Oh, there's nothing. There is no meaning. If there is nothing, there is no meaning." Does that mean, you know what I mean? Like I can just hear it now.
yeah, but that's to only know one side of it. It's like it may be true that there's a fundamental fact which is nothing, but that's not the end. That's less than halfway, because that fundamental nothing is producing everything.
Sure.
And it's a constant generosity, a
There has to be
boundless
something for
proportion.
nothing, right? Like there can't be like just nothingness. Like there has to be something. There has to be like, if I go back to like the laws of hermeticism, right? There, the polarities and cause and effect and all of that, right? Like to have complete nothingness, there has to be something for us to know nothingness. I don't know. It's just like that keeps coming up in my mind when you're saying that.
Yeah,
Like,
but look, what about like what was the Big Bang? It was a quantum ripple or something. There
yeah,
was some kind of ripple of nothing in nothing, and but boom, it all just started. I think that's what we're still living right now. We're still living the Big Bang in every moment.
sure.
It's so it's really the problem.
It's hard to explain, man. You can't really, you know what I mean? Like you just really talk about.
It is, and also again, it's like the words aren't quite right. Like I say nothing. I've had an experience where everything disappeared, and it was the most transformative experience in my life by far. That was when I really changed. Something was knocked out that never came back, and it was that I think of that as really some kind of pivot in my own life. Things really changed, and even though I'd had awakening experiences before then, that was the one. And what it knocked out was a ton of negativity, and it was by going into nothing that I joined everything. It's
Mm.
like it felt like I could come away with this sense of having met an absolute fact of nothing, and it healed everything. And it just made this boundless goodness keep pouring forth. And it hasn't really ever totally stopped since that happened. And that's now, what is it, the 2024, it's now 16 years ago.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, so I want to ask you, like, how has that evolved your consciousness, right? Like, it took away all the negativity, this expansion, this, you lost everything. Like, you lost, like, you had this experience of everything, like your reality going black, and there was nothing but this awareness.
There wasn't even awareness. There was some instant when even awareness was gone, and then came back, and
A total
everything was.
annihilation of yourself, like just.
I don't know what it was. It was in a deep meditation retreat, and I'd been doing a lot of very hardcore Zen training for several years at that point. And I was wrestling with a koan at the time that my master had given me, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, all this Zen I've been doing is just a kind of dance on nothing. I've had these insights, I've had some awakening experiences, and I sort of think of them as actual things. I've notched up this, yeah, well done, Henry, you got that, you got that. And it's all it's just some sort of vast cosmic play. It's not real the way I think it is. And then suddenly, bam, everything just fell away. And then I guess it was like everything kind of was reborn. It's kind of like that.
It's kind of like the
Obviously,
wave. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like a wave crashing on shore. Like, it's born, it experiences, it pauses, and then it goes back into the awe. It's almost like that experience, right? And then in that pause, in that moment, you go back into the ocean, but you don't. You go back to the ocean with a collection of things from the shore. Like, so I don't know that when you said that, that's what triggered in me. It was like almost like we are the waves breaking away from the ocean, having this experience. But when we go back, we take things with us. You know what I mean? That expand that ocean.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah,
Henry, man,
that's
this has
lovely.
been awesome, dude. Like, I've definitely been in absorption talking to you.
Well, thank you.
And I know we're up on time, but
there's something about the way you are that has allowed me to feel very open and free and ready to just
share it all. Yeah, buddy.
share and bear it all. Yeah.
Henry, I love the book, Original Love. I love the app, The Way. How can people connect with you? How can they buy the book and download the app?
Well, thank you. The app is available on Google Play and the App Store. And yeah, it's called The Way, Meditation Path. Single long-term journey. It'll teach you, I think, pretty much a lot of what you need to have a really fulfilling meditation path for a lifetime. We've got an amazing statistic that anybody who gets to session 8 of our app, at session 90, over 90% are still doing it every day. So that's mind-blowing.
That's huge.
Yeah,
that's huge.
We're really happy about that. The book, yeah, Original Love, it's on all the major sites for books. And hey, Trey, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Henry, man, this has been awesome, dude. Lastly, do you want to share anything real quick with the audience? It's on your heart.
I just feel, my heart is warm, and I always want people to realize that they're loved. The universe loves us. I don't exactly know whether that's the right language, but all of us can find a sense of being loved. And I've been through some hard times, and everybody goes through very hard times at times. And in the depths of it, it's really hard to believe that or feel that. I know. But it's actually amazingly always true.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Henry, my man, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.